Commander G1 stood on the bridge of her research ship, watching the purple and gold clouds of the Crimson Nebula stretch across the view screen. The colors danced and swirled like paint in water. Her crew had been studying this region for 3 months now, taking readings and collecting data about star formation. It was peaceful work, the kind she preferred. "Commander, we're getting some unusual readings from Sector 7, said Minho from his navigation station. His fingers moved across the control panel, bringing up a detailed scan of the area. Something big is moving out there. Jiwan walked over to look at his screen. The readings showed several ships much larger than her small research vessel. Can you tell what kind of ships they are? Working on it, said Yuna from the engineering station. She was the best systems analyst Jiwan had ever worked with. Her hands moved quickly over her controls. Wait, I'm getting energy signatures I don't recognize. These aren't Federation ships. Taman looked up from his communications console. Commander, I'm picking up encrypted transmissions. The pattern matches hegemony military codes. The bridge fell quiet. Everyone knew about the hegemony. They were an alliance of aggressive species that had been growing more bold in recent years. The reptilian Vorthak and the crystalline Nixari had joined forces 5 years ago, and they had been testing boundaries ever since. What are hegemony ships doing this far out? Jiwan asked. She moved back to her command chair and sat down. We're in neutral space. This area belongs to no one. Maybe they're exploring just like us, suggested Minho. Yuna shook her head. These aren't exploration ships. The energy readings suggest heavy weapons and military shields. This is a battle fleet. Jiwan felt a cold feeling in her stomach. How many ships? At least 50, Yuna replied. Maybe more. They're staying in formation, moving slowly through the nebula. Are they headed toward Federation space? Asked Taman. No, said Minho, checking his star charts. They're moving toward the buffer zone, the area around the Sol system. Everyone on the bridge became very still. The Sol system, Earth, the place where humans lived, the place the entire galaxy had agreed to leave alone. It had been 300 years since humans had withdrawn from galactic politics. Jiwan remembered the stories her grandmother told her about the old days, when humans were active members of the Galactic Federation. They had been good at many things. Too good, some said. They were excellent fighters, brilliant scientists, and clever diplomats. Some species had started to worry about human influence growing too strong. Then came what historians called the silence. Humans simply stopped talking to the rest of the galaxy. They recalled all their ambassadors, closed their trade routes, and sealed their borders. They sent one final message to the Galactic Federation. We choose isolation. Respect our borders and we will respect yours. That was 3 centuries ago. Since then, no one had heard from Earth. No human ships left the Sol system. No human signals reached other worlds. It was as if they had simply vanished from the galaxy. Most young beings like Jiwan's crew had never seen a human. They knew humans existed, but they seemed like creatures from old stories. The older generation spoke of them with respect, sometimes even fear. They remembered what humans could do when they wanted to. Commander, said Yuna quietly, there are stories about why humans withdrew from galactic society. What kind of stories? Asked Minho. My grandfather served on a Federation ship during the Titan Wars, 40 years before the Silence, Yuna explained. He told me that humans didn't fight wars the way other species did. They studied their enemies completely before making any move. When they finally acted, the war was already over. The enemy just didn't know it yet. Taman nodded. My uncle worked with human engineers on the Kepler Station project. He said they built things that lasted forever, but they built them so well that no one else could understand how they worked. When the humans left, half the station systems became mysteries. Those are just old stories, said Minho, but his voice sounded uncertain. Jiwan had heard similar tales. Stories about human warships that could appear anywhere without warning. Stories about human scientists who solved problems that other species thought were impossible. Stories about human diplomats who could end conflicts with a few words. But she had also heard other stories. Darker ones. Stories about what happened to species that pushed humans too far. The Kalari Empire had been the strongest military power in the galaxy until they made the mistake of attacking a human colony world. Within 6 months, the Kalari Empire no longer existed. Not destroyed, but somehow converted into a Federation member state. The Kalari claimed they had seen the wisdom of peace, but older beings whispered that humans had simply convinced them that resistance was pointless. Why do you think the hegemony is heading toward human space? Asked Taman. Maybe they don't believe the old stories, suggested Yuna. The younger hegemony leaders weren't alive during the days when humans were active. They might think 3 centuries of silence means humans have become weak. Juan felt that cold feeling in her stomach get worse. Or maybe they want to test human defenses, see if the stories are true. Should we report this to Federation Command? Asked Minho. We have to, Juan replied. But I don't think they'll do anything. The Federation has strict orders not to interfere with anything involving human space. Those orders came from the highest levels, and they've never been changed. She thought about the agreement that had been made 300 years ago. Humans would withdraw from galactic affairs completely, but in exchange all other species would respect their borders absolutely. It was a deal that had kept the peace for centuries. What do you think will happen if the hegemony actually enters human space? Asked Taman. No one answered. They all stared at the view screen, watching the nebula swirl with its beautiful colors. Somewhere out there, a hegemony fleet was moving toward the one place in the galaxy that every species had agreed to leave alone. Jiwan wondered if the galaxy was about to learn whether the old stories about humans were true. She hoped they would never find out. Some knowledge she thought was too dangerous to seek. Continue monitoring the hegemony fleet, she ordered. Record everything. If something happens, the Federation will need to know exactly what we saw. The bridge crew returned to their work, but the peaceful feeling of their research mission was gone. They were no longer just studying stars and nebulae. They were watching what might be the beginning of something much bigger and much more dangerous. Outside, the nebula continued its ancient dance, beautiful and uncaring about the fears of the tiny beings who traveled through its depths. General Hugh stood in the command center of the hegemony flagship, studying the tactical display before him. The asteroid field stretched across space like scattered diamonds, and somewhere in that field was their target. His reptilian Vorthak officers moved efficiently around the bridge, preparing for what would be a simple operation. Yuk was different from his alien crew. He was human, though he had not called Earth home for 30 years. He had left the Sol system as a young man, tired of humanity's isolation and hungry for adventure among the stars. The hegemony had welcomed him, promoted him, and given him the military career that Earth's peaceful policies could never offer. General, we have located the human mining operation, reported Captain Kira, her scaled face showing satisfaction. It appears to be a small facility. Maybe 200 workers. Good, Hayek replied. He had studied human mining operations during his years in the Federation databases. Are they operating within the buffer zone? Yes, sir. They are clearly inside the neutral area that was established around human space. Hyuk nodded. This was perfect. The hegemony leadership had been looking for an excuse to test human resolve. 3 centuries of silence had made many species wonder if humans were still capable of defending themselves. Some hegemony leaders believed that isolation had made humans soft and weak. Sir, should we attempt to contact them first? Asked another officer. Standard protocol suggests we should warn them to leave before taking action. No, Hyuk said firmly. We are here to send a message. The galaxy needs to see that human space is not untouchable. The old agreements were made by weak leaders who feared stories and legends. He turned to face his crew. Prepare all weapons. We will strike fast and hard. Leave no survivors to report what happened here. Captain Kira looked uncomfortable. Sir, these are civilian miners. They pose no threat to us. They are humans operating outside their agreed boundaries. Hayek replied coldly. They have broken the old accords by mining in neutral space. We are simply enforcing galactic law. The truth was different, and everyone on the bridge knew it. The human mining operation was small and peaceful. They were extracting rare minerals from asteroids that belonged to no one. But the hegemony needed an excuse to probe human defenses, and this mining station would serve that purpose. Sir, incoming transmission from the mining station, reported the communications officer. Put it through, Hyuk ordered. A voice filled the bridge, speaking in calm, accented English. This is Mining Supervisor Jeho of the Prometheus Station. We have detected your ships approaching our position. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The voice was steady and professional. Hyuk had forgotten how humans spoke to strangers with such confidence, even when facing superior numbers. It brought back memories of his youth on Earth, memories he preferred to ignore. This is General Hayek of the Hegemony Fleet, he responded. You are operating in violation of galactic territorial agreements. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. There was a pause. Then Jeho's voice returned, still calm but with an edge of concern. General, our records show this area as neutral space. We have all proper documentation for our mining rights. I can transmit our permits if you wish to review them. Your permits are meaningless, Hyuk replied. Human expansion beyond your borders will not be tolerated. Another pause. This time, when Jeho spoke, his voice carried a warning that chilled several alien officers on the bridge. It was not threatening or angry. It was simply certain. General, I must inform you that any hostile action against this facility will be reported to Earth immediately. Our communications are monitored by Seoul Defense Command. I strongly advise you to reconsider your position. Hyuk felt old anger rising in his chest. This was exactly why he had left human space. Always the warnings. Always the threats of consequences. Never the willingness to fight when challenged. Your threats mean nothing, he snapped. Earth abandoned you the moment you left their system. Prepare to be destroyed. General, Captain Kira said quietly. Perhaps we should reconsider. If they do have direct communication with Earth. Earth has been silent for 300 years, Hyuk interrupted. They will not break that silence for a handful of miners. All ships opened fire. The hegemony fleet unleashed their weapons on the small mining station. Plasma cannons and particle beams tore through the facility's light shields as if they were paper. The asteroid-based structures exploded in brilliant flashes of light and debris. Hyuk watched the destruction with grim satisfaction. This was how the galaxy should work. The strong took what they wanted from the weak. Earth's philosophy of isolation and peace had made humans forget this basic truth. Sir, we are detecting an escape pod launching from the mining station, reported an officer. Destroy it, Hyuk ordered. Sir, our weapons are having difficulty targeting the pod. It appears to be using some kind of advanced shielding technology. Hyuk frowned. He moved to the tactical station and studied the readings. The escape pod was indeed using technology he did not recognize. Its shields seemed to bend weapons fire around it rather than absorbing the energy. Continue firing, he ordered. Do not let it escape. For 10 minutes, the entire hegemony fleet concentrated their weapons on a single small escape pod. Their most advanced weapons struck the pod repeatedly, but the strange shields held. Slowly, the pod moved away from the battle zone. Damaged but intact. Sir, the pod has escaped, reported Captain Kira. It is transmitting on human communication frequencies. Hyuk felt a moment of unease. He had expected the mining facility to have standard Federation technology. The advanced shielding on that escape pod suggested that human technology had continued to develop during their centuries of isolation. It does not matter, he said, more to convince himself than his crew. One survivor cannot change anything. We have accomplished our mission. But as the hegemony fleet prepared to leave the asteroid field, Hyuk found himself thinking about the escape pod, about the technology that had allowed it to survive the concentrated fire of 50 warships, about the calm certainty in Supervisor Jeho's voice when he had mentioned Seoul Defense Command. 300 years was a long time. Long enough for a species to change in ways that others might not expect. Long enough for a peaceful people to prepare for the day when peace would no longer be possible. In the escape pod, Supervisor Jeho checked his emergency transmitter one final time. The message was already racing toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds, carrying news of the first hostile action against human civilians in 3 centuries. His message was simple. Seoul Defense Command, this is Jeho of Prometheus Station. We have been attacked without warning by hegemony forces. All hands lost except myself. They came in force and showed no mercy. The isolation has been broken. Please tell my family I tried to get everyone out. As the hegemony fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Jeho's pod drifted through the debris field that had once been his home and workplace. Around him floated the remains of 200 peaceful miners who had died because someone decided to test whether humans were still dangerous. Earth would receive his message in 6 hours. After 3 centuries of silence, humanity would have to decide how to respond to the first act of war committed against them since their withdrawal from galactic affairs. The galaxy was about to learn whether isolation had made humans weak, or whether it had given them time to become something far more dangerous than anyone remembered. President Nari sat in the Emergency Council chamber deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by the leaders of Earth's unified government. The chamber had not been used for such a serious meeting in over 2 centuries. The walls were lined with screens showing star maps, defense networks, and most importantly, the message from Supervisor J-Ho. "How long since we received the transmission?" asked Admiral Sung-hoon, the head of Seoul Defense Command. "6 hours and 37 minutes, replied Defense Minister Bora. "We have confirmed the destruction of Prometheus Station through our monitoring satellites." The room fell silent. Everyone present understood what this meant. For 300 years, Earth had maintained perfect isolation. No human military ships had left the Sol system. No human weapons had been fired in anger against alien species. The Great Peace had been maintained through mutual respect and fear of what might happen if it was broken. Now it was broken. "What do we know about the attacking force?" President Nari asked. 53 hegemony warships led by someone identifying himself as General Hyuk. Admiral Sung-hoon replied. "We have no record of any human by that name in our military databases. He must be one of the emigrants," said Minister Wonbin from the Immigration Department. "We had several thousand humans leave Earth during the early years of isolation. Some felt our policies were too restrictive. A human led the attack against other humans?" President Nari's voice carried disbelief and anger. "It appears so, Madam President." Nari stood and walked to the main display screen. It showed the Sol system with its defensive installations clearly marked. What the screen did not show was the true extent of Earth's capabilities. 3 centuries of isolation had not been spent in peaceful meditation. They had been spent in preparation. "Admiral, what is the current status of our fleet?" "All ships are ready for immediate deployment," Sung-hoon replied. "We have been maintaining full readiness since the day we withdrew from galactic affairs." "How many ships?" "The exact number is classified, but I can tell you that we have sufficient forces to handle any threat the current galaxy might present." President Nari nodded. She had been briefed on Earth's military capabilities when she took office, and the numbers had surprised even her. While the galaxy believed humans had only a few defensive ships around Earth, the reality was very different. "What about our technology advantage?" "Significant," replied Dr. Yuna from the Research Division. "We have continued to develop new technologies while the rest of the galaxy has remained relatively static. Our ships are faster, better armed, and more advanced than anything currently in service with other species." "How significant?" Dr. Yuna paused before answering. "Madam President, based on our intelligence about current galactic military capabilities, we estimate that one of our modern ships could defeat 10 to 15 ships of any other species." The weight of that statement settled over the room. Earth had not just maintained its technology during isolation. It had advanced far beyond what the galaxy could imagine. "What are our response options?" asked President Nari. "We could file a formal protest through diplomatic channels," suggested Foreign Minister Chae-young. "And show weakness," Admiral Sung-hoon replied firmly. "Madam President, this was not an accident. This was a deliberate test of our resolve. They attacked civilian miners and murdered 200 innocent people. A diplomatic protest will only encourage more attacks. What do you recommend, Admiral?" "We demonstrate our capabilities. We show the galaxy that the old agreements were not made out of human weakness but out of mercy." President Nari looked around the room at her advisors. These people had been chosen specifically because they understood the burden of Earth's isolation. They knew that humanity had withdrawn not because they feared other species, but because they feared what they themselves might become if left unchecked in galactic affairs. "If we reveal our true capabilities, there will be no going back to isolation," warned Foreign Minister Chae-young. "The isolation was already broken when they attacked our people," Admiral Sung-hoon replied. "The question now is whether we respond with strength or weakness." President Nari made her decision. "Admiral Sung-hoon, you are authorized to deploy our forces. Your mission is to demonstrate that attacks on human civilians will not be tolerated. You are to avoid unnecessary casualties among non-combatants, but you are to make it clear that Earth is not defenseless." "Understood, Madam President. What about the human leading the hegemony forces? He made his choice 30 years ago when he left Earth. He made another choice 6 hours ago when he ordered the attack. Treat him as what he has chosen to become." Admiral Sung-hoon stood and saluted. "I will not disappoint you, Madam President." 3 hours later, Commander Ji-won was still monitoring the hegemony fleet when something impossible happened. Her sensors detected ships approaching at incredible speed, but they were not using any form of faster-than-light travel that she recognized. "Commander, you need to see this," said Yuna urgently. The main screen showed space itself seeming to fold and bend, reality twisted like cloth being gathered in invisible hands. Then in a flash of brilliant light, 25 ships appeared from nowhere. "What kind of drive system is that?" whispered Minho. The ships were unlike anything in Federation databases. They were sleek and elegant, with hull designs that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Their energy signatures were completely alien, reading power levels that should have been impossible for ships of their size. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," said Taman. "It's on an open frequency." "Put it through." A calm female voice filled the bridge. "This is Captain Bora of the Earth vessel Indomitable. All Federation ships in this area are advised to maintain safe distance. We are responding to an attack on human civilians." Jiwan felt her heart racing. After 3 centuries, humans had returned to space. And they had brought technology that made Federation science look primitive. "Commander, the hegemony fleet is changing course," reported Minho. "They're moving to intercept the human ships." "This is going to be a massacre," whispered Yuna. 25 ships against 53. The humans don't stand a chance. But Jiwan remembered the old stories. Stories about human tactical superiority. Stories about wars that ended before the enemy knew they had begun. She watched the display screen with growing fascination and fear. "Maybe," she said quietly. "But which side will be massacred?" The human ships moved through space with impossible grace, their formation shifting and flowing like a school of fish. They were heading directly toward the hegemony fleet, showing no fear of the superior numbers they faced. The galaxy was about to witness the return of humanity to interstellar warfare. After 3 centuries of peace, Earth's children were coming home to remind everyone why other species had been so eager to accept human isolation. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Bora reviewed her orders one final time. She was to demonstrate human capabilities without unnecessary destruction. She was to show mercy to those who surrendered, but she was also to make it clear that the age of human isolation was ending. "All ships, this is Captain Bora. Remember your training. Remember why we are here. 200 of our people died because someone thought we had grown weak. Today we proved them wrong." The response came from 24 other ships, their voices unified. "Understood, Captain. Let's show them what 3 centuries of preparation can accomplish." General Hayuk studied the tactical display showing the approaching human ships. 25 vessels against his 53. The numbers should have favored him greatly, but something about the confident way the human ships moved through space made him uneasy. "General, should we attempt communication?" asked Captain Kira. "No," Hyuk replied firmly. "They are here because of the mining station. They know what we did and they are here for revenge. We will show them that humans are no longer the military power they once were." The human ships moved in a formation that Hayuk did not recognize. They seemed to flow through space like liquid, constantly shifting positions but never breaking their advance toward the hegemony fleet. "Sir, I'm reading very strange energy signatures from their ships," reported the sensor officer. "Their power levels are much higher than anything in our databases." "Impossible," Hyuk said. "Federation intelligence reports indicate that human technology has remained static during their isolation. They should be using equipment that is 3 centuries out of date." But even as he spoke, Hayuk could see that something was wrong with that assumption. The human ships moved too smoothly, responded too quickly to course changes. Their formation flying was perfect, as if all 25 ships were controlled by a single mind. "General, the human ships are entering weapons range," reported his tactical officer. "All ships prepare to engage," Hayuk ordered. "Target their lead vessels. We will destroy them quickly and show the galaxy that human military might is nothing but old legends." The hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and missile launchers filled space with deadly energy. The barrage was enormous, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ships simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. "What happened?" Hyuk demanded. "Sir, they seemed to phase out of normal space just before our weapons reached them," the sensor officer reported with confusion in his voice. "That's impossible. Nothing can phase in and out of normal space that quickly. Sir, they're reappearing behind our formation." Hyuk spun to look at his tactical display. The human ships had somehow moved through space in a way that his sensors could barely detect. They were now positioned perfectly to attack the hegemony fleet from behind. All ships turned to engage. Do not let them maintain that position advantage. But before the hegemony ships could complete their turn, the human vessels opened fire. Hyuk had never seen weapons like these. Instead of the familiar energy beams or explosive missiles, the human ships fired something that looked like ripples in space itself. When these ripples struck hegemony vessels, the ships simply came apart at the molecular level. "Sir, we're losing ships," reported Captain Kira with panic in her voice. The destroyer squadron just vanished. They didn't explode. They just stopped existing. "Return fire," Hyuk shouted. "All ships concentrate fire on the human flagship." Again, the hegemony fleet unleashed their weapons. Again, the human ships phased out of normal space, avoiding the attack completely. This time, when they reappeared, they were spread throughout the hegemony formation. "How are they doing that?" demanded Hyuk. His sensor officer was studying the readings frantically. "Sir, I think they're using some kind of dimensional technology. They're not actually moving faster than light. They're stepping outside our dimension, and then stepping back in wherever they want to be." The human ships continued their attack with methodical precision. They would phase into position, fire their reality-warping weapons, and phase out again before the hegemony ships could respond. Each attack destroyed 2 or 3 hegemony vessels completely. "Sir, we've lost 30 ships," reported Captain Kira. "Should we attempt to withdraw?" "No," Hyuk snarled. "We cannot show weakness. All ships ramming speed. If we cannot hit them with our weapons, we will hit them with our hulls." But the hegemony ships never got close enough to ram the human vessels. The human ships seemed to anticipate every move the hegemony made. They fought as if they could read Hyuk's mind, always positioning themselves perfectly to avoid attacks while delivering devastating counterstrikes. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Bora watched the battle unfold with calm professionalism. Her ship's artificial intelligence was linked to all the other human vessels, creating a network that could process information and make tactical decisions faster than any biological mind. "Captain, the enemy commander is attempting another direct assault," reported her tactical officer, Colonel Minjae. "Let them come," Bora replied. "Adjust formation pattern 7. Make sure they understand the futility of their approach." The human ships shifted their positions with impossible precision. As the remaining hegemony vessels charged toward them, the human ships phased through multiple dimensions simultaneously, appearing and disappearing around the enemy formation like ghosts. "Sir, we cannot target them," reported Hyuk's weapons officer. "They're using some kind of technology that makes our targeting systems useless." "Then fire randomly," Hyuk ordered desperately. "Fill space with weapons fire." They cannot avoid everything, but they could. The human ships moved through the storm of weapons fire as if it did not exist. Their dimensional phase technology allowed them to step out of normal space for fractions of a second, just long enough to avoid incoming fire. "Sir, we're down to 12 ships," Captain Kira reported. Hyuk looked at his tactical display in disbelief. In 15 minutes, the human fleet had destroyed 41 hegemony warships without taking a single hit in return. This was not a battle. This was a demonstration of technological superiority so complete that resistance was meaningless. "General," came a calm voice over the communication system. "This is Captain Bora of the human fleet. You have lost enough ships. Surrender now, and we will allow your remaining vessels to withdraw." "Never," Hyuk replied. "I would rather die than surrender to isolationist cowards." "Very well," Captain Bora replied. "But understand that what you have seen so far has been restraint. We have been trying to minimize casualties. If you insist on continuing this engagement, we will be forced to demonstrate our full capabilities. Do your worst, human." The human ships stopped moving. They hung motionless in space for a moment, and then something extraordinary happened. Each ship began to glow with an inner light that grew brighter and brighter. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildups from all human vessels," reported the sensor officer. "Power levels are beyond anything I've ever recorded. All ships, emergency evasive maneuvers," Hyuk ordered. But there was nowhere to run. The human ships fired simultaneously, and their weapons were unlike anything they had used before. Instead of the space-warping projectiles, they fired beams of pure energy that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics wherever they touched. The remaining hegemony ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality as if they had never been built. In 3 seconds, 11 warships and their crews became nothing more than empty space. General Hyuk found himself alone in his flagship, the only survivor of a fleet that had numbered 53 ships less than 20 minutes ago. "General Hyuk," came Captain Bora's voice again, "you are the sole survivor of your fleet. Your weapons are offline. Your shields are down. You have 2 choices. Surrender and live to face justice for your crimes, or continue fighting and join your fleet in oblivion. Hyuk looked around his bridge. His crew was dead, killed when the human weapons had somehow reached through his ship's shields as if they were not there. His ship was powerless, floating helplessly in space. "I surrender," he said quietly. "Wise choice," Captain Bora replied. "A boarding party will arrive shortly to take you into custody." As Hyuk waited for his captors to arrive, he thought about the briefings he had received about human military capabilities. Intelligence had suggested that human technology was outdated, that their isolation had left them weak and unprepared for modern warfare. Those intelligence reports had been catastrophically wrong. The humans had not spent 3 centuries growing weak. They had spent 3 centuries becoming something far beyond what any other species could imagine. The Battle of Kepler Junction lasted 17 minutes and changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. When news of the engagement reached other species, it carried a simple message. The age of human isolation was ending, and the humans who emerged were not the same ones who had withdrawn 3 centuries ago. They were something far more dangerous. Empress Chaeyoung received the news of the Kepler Junction battle in her throne room on the hegemony capital world of Drakmor. The report was delivered by a trembling messenger who had barely escaped the battle in a damaged communication ship. 53 ships destroyed in 17 minutes? She asked, her voice carrying deadly calm. "Yes, Your Majesty. Only General Hyuk's flagship survived, and he was taken prisoner by the humans. Chaeyoung was human herself, though she had not seen Earth for 40 years. Like Hyuk, she had been one of the emigrants who left during the early years of human isolation. But unlike Hyuk, she had risen to the very top of hegemony leadership through ruthless ambition and brilliant military strategy. And the human losses? None, Your Majesty. Their ships were not even damaged." Chaeyoung stood and walked to the massive window that overlooked the capital city. Millions of Vorthak and Nexari citizens went about their daily lives, unaware that their military had just suffered the most devastating defeat in hegemony history. "Your Majesty," said Admiral Do-Yun, her chief military advisor, "perhaps we should consider a diplomatic solution. If human technology has advanced this far—" "No," Chaeyoung replied firmly. "We will not bow to human intimidation. If they think they can frighten the hegemony with one battle, they are mistaken." She turned to face her advisors. "Prepare the main battle fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We will show the humans that the hegemony does not surrender to anyone. Your Majesty, with respect, our intelligence suggests that the humans may have technological advantages we do not fully understand." "Intelligence was wrong about their military capabilities," Chaeyoung said coldly. "But intelligence was correct about one thing. Humans are still human. They still have the same weaknesses they have always had. They are too merciful, too concerned with avoiding casualties, too willing to negotiate when they should fight." She activated the communication system that reached every world in hegemony space. "Citizens of the hegemony, this is your Empress. Today, Earth violated 3 centuries of agreed isolation to attack our forces. They destroyed 53 ships and murdered thousands of loyal soldiers. This aggression cannot stand. We will not bow to human threats. We will not accept human dominance. The hegemony goes to war." The response was immediate. Across 24 worlds, hegemony fleets began mobilizing. Vorthak battle cruisers, Nexari dreadnoughts, and allied ships from a dozen smaller species. Within days, the largest military force in galactic history was assembled and moving toward human space. Admiral Sung-hoon received the intelligence reports in his command center on the human battleship Determination. The hegemony was mobilizing everything they had. Over 3,000 ships, supported by orbital weapons platforms and planetary defense networks. "Admiral, they're not just planning to attack our forces," reported his intelligence officer. "They're preparing for a full invasion of human space." "Let them come," Sung-hoon replied calmly. Captain Bora's demonstration at Kepler Junction was just the beginning. It's time to show the galaxy what 3 centuries of preparation really accomplished. He activated his communication system. "All human fleets, this is Admiral Sung-hoon. The hegemony has chosen to escalate this conflict to total war. Our rules of engagement are hereby changed. We are authorized to use any means necessary to protect human space and human lives." The human response was swift and devastating. Ships that had remained hidden in the outer Sol system for centuries suddenly appeared throughout hegemony space. They moved through dimensions that other species did not know existed, striking at military targets with surgical precision. Commander Jiwan watched in amazement as human forces demonstrated technologies that seemed like magic. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, weapons that converted enemy vessels into harmless materials at the molecular level, defensive systems that made human ships virtually untouchable. "Commander, look at this," said Yuna from her sensor station. "The humans just converted an entire hegemony weapons platform into flowering plants." "What?" Jiwan moved to look at the display. Where a massive orbital defense station had been, there was now a garden floating in space complete with trees and flowers that somehow survived in the vacuum. "How is that possible?" asked Minho. "I don't think it matters how," Jiwan replied quietly. "What matters is that they can do it." The human campaign was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of destroying enemy ships, human forces often converted them into something harmless, but impossible to ignore. Weapons became musical instruments. Armor became flower gardens. Entire fleets found their ships transformed into works of art that broadcast messages of peace in dozens of languages. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet," said Taman. "Put it through." A familiar voice filled the bridge. It was Captain Bora from the Indomitable. "Federation vessels, you are witnessing the human response to unprovoked aggression. We want you to understand that everything you are seeing could have been done to your worlds at any time during the past 3 centuries. We chose isolation not because we were weak, but because we were becoming something the galaxy was not ready to face." The transmission ended, leaving Jiwan and her crew in stunned silence. On Drakmor, Empress Cheyoung watched her empire crumble in real time. Human forces had penetrated every level of hegemony space, but instead of conquering, they were transforming. Military installations became art galleries. Weapons factories became schools. Warships became exploration vessels with their crews somehow convinced that peace was more important than conquest. "Your Majesty, we must surrender," pleaded Admiral Do-hyun. "They're not destroying us. They're changing us into something else. Our own people are beginning to question the war." "Never," Cheyoung snarled. "I would rather see the hegemony destroyed than submit to human control." But she was beginning to understand that destruction was not what the humans offered. They offered something far more terrifying: the complete transformation of everything the hegemony had built. A human ship appeared in orbit around Drakmor. It was beautiful, like a work of art made from liquid starlight. Instead of weapons, it projected a message that everyone on the planet could see and hear. "People of Drakmor, this is Admiral Sung-hoon of Earth. Your leaders chose war over peace. They chose hatred over understanding. We are here to offer you a different choice. We can help you build a better society, one based on cooperation instead of conquest. The decision is yours." Across the planet, hegemony citizens looked up at the human ship and began to ask questions that their leaders had forbidden them to ask. Questions about why they were at war. Questions about whether conquest was really necessary. Questions about what kind of future they wanted for their children. The hegemony military began to fragment as soldiers and officers decided that the human message made more sense than their orders. Ships surrendered without firing a shot. Entire fleets defected to join the human cause. In her throne room, Empress Cheyoung realized that she had not just lost a war. She had lost her entire civilization to an enemy that conquered through compassion rather than force. The galaxy burned, but it burned with the light of transformation rather than destruction. And at the center of it all, humanity emerged from its long isolation to remind everyone why they had been so eager to accept human withdrawal 3 centuries ago. They had not feared human weapons. They had feared human wisdom, and that wisdom was now reshaping the galaxy whether the galaxy wanted it or not. The great meeting hall on the Federation capital world of Zentara had never hosted such an important gathering. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy sat in the curved amphitheater, watching as President Nari of Earth took her place at the central podium. It had been 6 months since the hegemony war began, and 3 months since it ended. The conflict that Empress Cheyoung had expected to last for years was over, almost before it began. The hegemony still existed, but it was no longer the same organization that had attacked Prometheus Station. Commander Jiwan sat in the Federation Observer section, still trying to understand everything she had witnessed. The war had not ended with surrender or conquest. It had ended with transformation. The hegemony had simply stopped being a military threat because its citizens had chosen a different path. Fellow beings of the galaxy, President Nari began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. We are here to establish new agreements that will prevent future conflicts and ensure lasting peace. At the defendants' table sat General Hayuk and former Empress Cheyung, the two humans who had led the hegemony's aggression against their own species. They would face judgment not from alien courts, but from the home they had abandoned. The events of the past 6 months have shown us all something important, President Nari continued. Isolation was not weakness. It was preparation. For 3 centuries, Earth developed not just new technologies, but new ways of thinking about conflict and peace. Supreme Chancellor Doyun of the Federation Council raised his hand to speak. President Nari, the galaxy needs to understand. How did Earth develop such advanced capabilities while maintaining complete isolation? We never stopped learning, Nari replied. We studied every species in the galaxy from a distance. We observed your conflicts, your technologies, your social structures. We learned from your mistakes and built upon your successes. Most importantly, we prepared for the day when isolation would no longer be possible. Admiral Sung-hoon stepped forward from the Earth delegation. The technologies you witnessed during the recent conflict represent 3 centuries of focused development. While the galaxy remained relatively static, Earth pushed the boundaries of science, engineering, and social organization. But why develop such overwhelming military power if you desired peace? Asked Ambassador Minho from the Centauri Alliance. Because true peace can only exist when those who desire war understand the futility of their choice, Admiral Sung-hoon replied. We developed the capability to end any conflict quickly and decisively, but more importantly, we developed the ability to transform conflict into cooperation. President Nari gestured toward the defendants' table. Which brings us to the matter of justice. General Hayuk and former Empress Cheyung will face trial on Earth for their crimes against humanity, but their punishment has already begun. What do you mean? Asked Chancellor Doyun. They chose to abandon their humanity in favor of conquest and aggression, Nari explained. Their punishment is to live with the consequences of that choice. They will never again see Earth. They will never again be part of human society. They are exiles from the very isolation they rejected. General Hayuk stood up slowly. You cannot do this to us. We are still human citizens. You forfeited your citizenship when you led attacks against human civilians. President Nari replied coldly. You chose your path. Now you will live with it. Former Empress Cheyung laughed bitterly. So the great human mercy extends only to aliens, not to your own kind. Our mercy extends to those who choose peace over war, Admiral Sung-hoon replied. You had every opportunity to make that choice. Instead, you chose to lead others into conflict with your own species. Commander Ji-won watched the proceedings with fascination. The humans were not executing their traitors or imprisoning them. They were doing something far more devastating, cutting them off completely from the society they had betrayed. Now we must discuss the future, President Nari said, addressing the entire assembly. Earth will return to a modified isolation. We will maintain monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, but we will not interfere in local politics or conflicts unless they threaten human interests or involve attacks on civilian populations. What about the technological advantages you have demonstrated? Asked Ambassador Yuna from the Rigel Collective. Will Earth share these advances with the rest of the galaxy? Some technologies will be shared through the Federation Council, President Nari replied. Medical advances, agricultural improvements, and defensive systems will be made available to species that demonstrate peaceful intentions. Military technologies will remain restricted to Earth. Chancellor Do-hyun leaned forward. President Nari, the galaxy has learned a valuable lesson from recent events. No one will challenge Earth's borders again, but many species are curious about human social development. How did Earth achieve such unity and focus during 3 centuries of isolation? We learned to see beyond our immediate differences, President Nari explained. When you have 300 years to think about what kind of species you want to be, you have time to solve problems that seem impossible in the short term. We eliminated poverty, ended environmental destruction, and created a society based on cooperation rather than competition. And if other species wanted to learn from your social advances? Asked Ambassador Wanbin from the Outer Rim territories. We would be happy to share our experiences, President Nari replied. But each species must find its own path to peace and cooperation. We cannot impose human solutions on non-human problems. The trial of General Hyuk and former Empress Chaeyoung lasted 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming and their guilt was undeniable. They had led unprovoked attacks against civilian targets and caused the deaths of hundreds of innocent people. Their sentence was announced by Judge Taman of the Earth Supreme Court. You are hereby stripped of Earth citizenship and exiled from all human territory. You will live out your lives among the alien species you chose over your own kind. You will never again set foot on human soil or benefit from human protection. As the 2 exiles were led away, General Hyuk turned back one last time. You think you've won, but you've only delayed the inevitable. Other species will challenge Earth again. Perhaps, President Nari replied. And when they do, they will learn the same lesson you learned. Earth desires peace, but Earth is prepared for war. The choice between those 2 options will always belong to others. 6 months later, Commander Ji-won stood on the observation deck of her research ship, watching a human monitoring station being constructed in the nebula, where this all began. The station was beautiful, like all human architecture, and completely peaceful in appearance. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human station, reported Yuna. Put it through. Captain Bora's voice filled the bridge, as calm and professional as always. Federation vessel, this is Monitor Station Prometheus. We are conducting routine operations in this sector. Please proceed with your research mission. Acknowledged, Monitor Station. This is Commander Ji-won of the Federation Research Vessel Discovery. It's good to have you watching over this region. Thank you, Commander. The galaxy is safer when everyone can pursue peaceful activities without fear of interference. As the transmission ended, Ji-won reflected on everything that had changed. The galaxy had learned that the most dangerous species was not the one that sought conquest, but the one that prepared for peace while remaining ready for war. Earth had returned to its isolation, but now that isolation came with a promise and a threat. The promise was that humans would not interfere with other species who chose peaceful paths. The threat was that humans would be watching, ready to act if anyone else decided that violence was the answer to their problems. The galaxy had tried to test human resolve and discovered that human isolation had never been about weakness. It had been about giving the rest of the galaxy time to grow wise enough to coexist with a species that had chosen to become something beyond what anyone thought possible. Now, as Earth's monitoring stations took their positions throughout the galaxy, every species understood the most important lesson of all. You could disturb the humans once, but you would never get the chance to do it twice. Peace, it turned out, was not the absence of the ability to make war. Peace was the choice to refrain from war when you possessed the power to end any conflict before it truly began. Earth had made that choice for 3 centuries. Now the rest of the galaxy would have to decide whether they were wise enough to make the same choice, or foolish enough to test human patience again. The humans were watching, the humans were waiting, and the humans were ready.